Hello. Well, we've had our Brexit election, and the result is unequivocal. We're going out. And of course a lot of people are absolutely shocked at the result because the Tories have had a landslide victory, much to many people's surprise, mine included. I personally felt that Labour's manifesto was pretty good, if a bit scary with all the spending they promised, but nope, goodbye. They've had the worst results since, I think, 1935 or something for Labour. So there you go. I'm going to summarise my take on this election in one sentence, really. If Parliament is stupid enough to allow the people a referendum, then they must implement the result. That is what this election result means to me. Because at the end of the day, although Labour was sitting on the fence saying, well, what we'll do is negotiate a new deal and then decide whether to promote Remain or Leave after that, and have a second referendum based on the New Deal, it's all very logical and reasonable, but it's also ignoring the fact of the previous referendum, which was that we must leave by a small margin. There are a substantial proportion of people who apparently didn't care about the result and didn't vote in the first referendum, the only referendum on this issue. So not counting them, there was a majority in favour of leaving. And Parliament has been struggling and squirming and writhing and trying not to do it for 3 years now. And the electorate have made it quite clear. Get on with it. Right. Fine. We're stuck with it, whether we like it or not. Personally, I've always been mildly in favour of Brexit. Not because I hate immigrants or free movement or anything. In my case, it's about the politics of the EU. I feel that it's being run effectively by non-elected bureaucrats. Yes, we have a parliament which cannot initiate legislation. We have a council of ministers who are elected ministers, like our Prime Minister, our Chancellor of the Exchequer will go and sit on the European Council and make up or propose rules to the Commission. But of course they're all globalist twerps and are not interested in what the people want either, whether they're elected or not. You know. So there you go. The people have spoken, and they've spoken again more firmly. This is a serious slapdown for the left, to be honest. People will say, oh, it's because people didn't like Jeremy Corbyn, they didn't trust him, he seems like a sort of Marxist crazy guy, and yeah, he's one of the old school loony left. Not as loony as some have been, to be fair. And he's consistent in his views over time, mostly, which for a politician is quite something. Well, politicians pretend to be consistent, don't they? They'll make some stupid comment, then they'll double down on it, and everybody knows they're lying. I think with Jeremy Corbyn, he was reasonably truthful as politicians go, as far as I can make out. But obviously, he's going to be booted out. Strategy was wrong. The strategy was just wrong. And the strategy of the Liberal Democrat Party, the third party in Britain, was also just wrong. Their strategy was cancel Brexit. And the leader of the Lib Dems has lost her seat altogether. She's no longer an MP. She's no longer the leader of the Lib Dems. Out. The electorate of Scotland booted her out. She only lost by about 129 votes, but still that's something for the leader of a party. That is a catastrophic result, really. So the vote went to the Tories, whose mantra was get Brexit done. And yeah, everybody's fed up with the 3 years of wrangling that's been going on and the inability to negotiate a decent deal. Well, we're not going to get a decent deal now, because the Tories have negotiated a deal which is, as I understand it, not all that great, but we're going to be stuck with it. End of January, we're out. There's certainty at last. Gross domestic product in the UK will probably drop substantially for many years, 5 to 10 maybe, before we can recover, unless the Tories are really right and they can make good trade deals with the EU, with other countries, and get trade and the free market really running. Because there's no doubt about it, the free market can generate huge wealth. The free market is the best method of doing that. So it's not actually theoretically impossible that the Tories are right. Personally, I would favour the Labour policies of nationalising the energy companies, the railways, the broadband, which is, insignificant at the moment, really, and the water companies, because they have all three been worse in private hands than they were when they used to be nationalised. So free markets are not working for those industries, and we should take them back into public ownership, really. It's not going to happen, obviously, with the Tories in power. Well, why did Labour lose so badly? One, ignoring the referendum result. Yes. Two, Jeremy Corbyn not liked by a lot of people. I don't know why. He seems okay to me. A bit, loony lefty, but okay. Just my opinion, I suppose. The three, they lost a load of seats across the North and the Midlands of England, which, apart from the city centres, are or have been for the last century Labour strongholds. They lost seats that they have held for 100 years. Lots of them, not just one or two either. The thing is, the Labour Party, for a long time, ever since Tony Blair really, has been neglecting its core voters, those people in the North and the Midlands in particular, the working classes, as they used to be, and the underclasses even, many of whom don't bother to vote, because they feel left out anyway, or unrepresented. And it's true, they are unrepresented. And since Tony Blair came in and he tried to move Labour towards the centre, so away from working class politics, away from support for workers' rights, they were undercut dramatically under Tony Blair and later Labour governments. They did nothing to improve workers' rights. In fact, for decades they were undercutting them. I work effectively 9 hours a day now, whereas I used to be able to work 7.5. And the reason I'm working 9 hours a day is because my lunch break is not paid for. It used to be, and therefore the companies, you'd have a half-hour lunch break, say, not so great as a 1 hour lunch break, but still, you'd have a half-hour lunch break, or maybe an hour's lunch break, but it would count as your working hours. And they didn't want to pay you for more than, say, 8 hours. Too much money going out, they figured, I guess. So you'd have a shorter working day. But now, you're not paid for that hour. So you have your lunch, but you're not paid for it. So I get to work at 8:30, I can't leave till 5:30. 9 hours. You might argue, yeah, but it's a lunch, it's a break. Why should it be paid for? Well, it's a matter of negotiation, I guess. There's no in-principle reason as far as I know, but it seems to me that it was better for me when I had a shorter working day, whether the lunch was paid for or not. Because now I'm hanging around for longer and I'm still getting the same pay. And so as a matter of principle, I leave my workplace for my lunch break. I don't sit at my desk, because if I sit at my desk, work will come by. Because I do desk side support, IT type stuff. And so people will come up and say, this isn't working, and I'll need to help them, because I'm inclined to help them if they're stuck, right? So as in principle, I go outside and walk around, or go to a cafe or something, right? So I actually am out. Some people I know go so far as to leave the work phone in the office as well, because they're not being paid for the time. Leave it there. Because a work mobile is a way to keep you working when you're not working. Right. That's why companies are so keen on them. But for people up north, to get back to the point, in particular the working class areas across the Midlands and the North, which used to be the industrial heartlands of Britain when we had an industry, were much more concerned about their rights being undermined by Labour as well as by Tories, of course. Tories always do that. By Labour in particular. And that the Northerners, as I understand it, not being a Northerner, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's much more concern up there about competition for jobs. I'm in London. There are jobs all over the place. There are more jobs here than pretty much anywhere in all of Europe. And we have half of Europe coming here to get the jobs, right? And there's still jobs for everybody. Or nearly. But up north, I don't think that's the picture. Pay rates are lower, accommodation is much cheaper, but it's much harder to find a job. And if people are coming in from outside, undercutting even the low wages that you have up there, that's a bit scary. And I can understand their concerns about free movement. I don't accept that people... Okay, some people do hate foreigners and are racist and all the rest of it. I don't support that kind of retarded stupidity, but because people are just people wherever they come from. Okay, sometimes they have incompatible customs and are just crazy, but we have crazy people too. Just look at the internet, right? So, fear of competition and governments not doing anything about it, and in fact undermining the position of people up north actively and openly. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, and on and on. And then, in 2008, Labour trashed the economy. We had the big crash. It was worldwide, but due to many years of Labour deregulation of the markets, following on from Margaret Thatcher, who began it all, resulted in the inevitable market collapse, which always happens when the markets are deregulated. Okay. And so we've had... the Labour also compounded it by spending hard during the good times. Keynesian economics, which appears to be correct, according to most people, well, no, according to some, not according to me, anyway, suggests that you should save when times are good, use the good times to pay off the national debt, get the company into a good financial position, so that you can spend and get into debt when the times are hard and you need to spend more on social security and investing in infrastructure to get the next good time to come along. boosting business and all the rest of it. But instead what we had was spending in the good times, and then we had spending in the bad times, then spending in the good times as well. Then the crash came, and as the Chancellor left a jokey note for his successor, there's no money left. Yeah. Of course, the Tories, when they came in, bailed out the banks and didn't bail out the ordinary people. That's made a lot of people angry too, but there's no clue anywhere that Labour would have done any different. They had not shifted out of the centre at that point. Labour's view was that they needed support from the centre in order to win. That may have been correct. Labour's views shifted under Jeremy Corbyn to being left, a very left, and nationalising industries, providing large amounts of social security and support for people. Great policies from some points of view, a bit scary in terms of expenditure and increasing the national debt. But that is what you do to get rid of the hard times, according to the left wing anyway, and Keynesian economics. But instead the Northerners have had austerity and deindustrialisation imposed by Margaret Thatcher. This was just continued under the Labour Party from Tony Blair onwards. And then austerity under the Tories again for the last 10 years. Or 9 or whatever. And nobody's been looking out for them for a long, long time. And they feel that Brexit is a necessary move. It's a forced change on an establishment that doesn't want it. That in itself is a reason to go ahead with it. Because the establishment needs to be told, you need to represent these people, or you will not get their cooperation. So, as Boris has put it, they loaned their votes to the Conservatives, and the Conservatives had better pay it back, because they will be thrashed in the next election if they don't. So, for one term, they've got these ex-Labour voters on their side, reluctantly, holding their noses as they vote, right? People who've never voted, whose families have never voted for generations, Conservative, have given them one shot. Get this Brexit done, give the establishment a kick up the pants, give the Labour Party a kick up the pants, and see what happens. We're going to get 5 years of Tories, or maybe 15, if Labour can't sort itself out. Can the Tories be trusted with the NHS? Not really. But they know that they have to keep these votes that have been loaned to them. Otherwise they'll just be one-off votes. Half of them are going to go back no matter what, probably, to Labour. But if the Tories want to keep these votes, they can't denude the NHS, really. Because then they will only have one term in power, I think. They're going to do Brexit. That's the point of the vote. After that, they've got to think, how are they going to keep these Northerners voting for them? So they're going to have to move to the centre, actually, and away from the far right. They're going to have to implement social security of some sort. It's going to make them grit their teeth, but Boris has enough of a majority that he is immune from the ERG, the Electoral Reform Group, or whatever they're called, the Jacob Rees-Moggs and co extreme hard Brexiteers within the Tory party. Boris has enough of a majority to be moderate. And he's a clever, wily character. So is Michael Gove, who will obviously be an important minister, I'm sure. These are both sneaky characters who can see which side their bread is buttered on. That's why they wanted this election in the first place, I'm sure. And the writing is on the wall for them if they don't support the aspirations of that swathe of voters. The South is going to vote for Tory anyway. We do generally, except for London, like the central districts of London and certain other cities. If you look at the map of Britain now, it's blue with a few red spots on it. It's not even enough to say it's measles, you know. So that's it. If Parliament is going to be stupid enough to allow a referendum, then they must implement it, or they're going to get smacked, and they have been, right? Those parties not supporting the implementation of the referendum result have been clobbered, and that has to be the message, the main message. And the message for the Tories, as I say, is get Brexit done, but don't neglect the Northerners, because you'll be out at the next election if you do. Do you agree? Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think? Were the Labour policies not credible? Too expensive? Was it fear of competition for jobs up north that was behind that vote? Or something else? Decades of being ignored, for example, by politicians in London. Comment below, and bye for now.